But for now, property, plant, and equipment is going to be what? 500. So we want to use that to forecast our depreciation expense. So let's take a look here. Depreciation expense last year was 300. And what was my property, plant, and equipment last year? Depreciation expense was 30. Property, plant, and equipment was 300. Okay, so let's just think for a second. Last year, I had $30 of depreciation expense with 300 of property, plant, and equipment. In fact, maybe I'll write this the other way around. I had $300 of property, plant, and equipment, so I had $30 in depreciation expense. We can kind of think, well, how long am I assuming that my stuff's going to last? If I've got $300 worth of stuff and 30 of it wears out each year, it looks like I'm assuming it's going to last about 10 years. Does that make sense? If 30 wears out and I had 300, then it looks like about 1/10 is wearing out each year, or it's lasting 10 years. So you tell me now. If now I'm forecasting that next year I'll have $500 in property, plant, and equipment, and I'm assuming that stuff lasts about 10 years. If I have $500 in property, plant, and equipment, and stuff is lasting about 10 years, let's just do a computation on the side here. I'll do it up here. 500 and it lasts about 10 years. It looks like, okay, $50 in depreciation expense. That's what my assumption is. A depreciation expense goes up by how much my property, plant, and equipment goes up. And it looks like we're assuming our property, plant, and equipment lasts about 10 years. Or another way to say that is it looks like our depreciation expense is about 10% of property, plant, and equipment. Then if my property, plant, and equipment goes up to 500, then my depreciation expense should go up to 50. That's how much is going to wear out next year. Next, operating expenses. Well, they were 170. And without any further details about maybe some of them are going to fix, they're going to stay the same, they're like rent or whatever, I'm going to assume that they're going to go up at the same rate as sales. So this last year, I see that operating expenses were 170 and sales were 1,000, so they were 17% of sales. So my best estimate is, without any further information, is that next year my other operating expenses are going to be about 70% of sales. 17% of forecasted sales of 1,400 is 238. So now let's compute our operating income, our forecasted operating income. Forecasted gross profit is 420 minus my forecasted depreciation expense of 50 because my property, plant, and equipment is forecasted to go up to 500. Forecasted other operating expenses of 238. They're still going to be 17% of sales. So now I've got my forecasted operating profit of 132. Beautiful. Interest expense. Interest expense was 30. It should go up by 40% because sales are going up by 40%. No. Interest expense is tied to loans. So let's take a look at the loans. Last year, the bank loans were 300. And we're forecasting, or our decision is that the loans are going to increase by 224. So if loans increase by 224, they're going to go from 300 up to 524. That's great. Well, what's that going to do to my interest expense? Well, you tell me. Let's do a simple calculation here. Interest expense. Last year, our interest expense was $30 on loans of 300. That looks like an interest rate of 10%. We're doing easy numbers here. 10%. Sorry. Let's erase that so it looks pretty. Interest rate of 10% last year. If we had interest expense of $30 on loans of 300. All right. Well, what are my loans expected to go to this next year? Let's take a look. Expected to go to 524. That's the preliminary decision that I've made. Well, I'm going to do that calculation over here. If I've got $524 in loans and the interest rate is 10%, it looks like my interest ought to be about $50. $52. $52.4 to be exact, but let's leave off the 0.4 and we'll just go with the 52. So my interest expense should go up to 52, 10% of the bank loan. That's the interest rate, just like last year. I'm assuming that the interest rate is going to remain the same. So if my interest rate on loans remains the same and my loans go from 300 up to 524, then my interest expense should go from 30 up to 52, 52.4. We'll round it off to 52. So now if my interest expense is forecasted to go up to 52, operating profit minus forecasted interest expense gives me forecasted income before taxes of 80.